So Campbell, I want to circle back around to the CO2 intolerance because I find it so interesting because when I do, mini breath holds, you taught us how to do the Bolt score, which is an amazing, just sort of a measurement of how your nervous system is doing. I recently went through a really stressful time and I found that my Bolt score just went down significantly. And I could tell that I wasn't able to hold my breath as long. Can you talk a little bit about CO2 intolerance and its correlation with anxiety? And again, so many people just think I have a mental problem, but really it is probably a physiological problem, and CO2 intolerance being a really huge part of that.
Yeah. And I've, our little boy's kind of gone through a couple of weeks of really poor sleep, and I've noticed my CO2 tolerance out the window, like I'm not sleeping well. And now my body, my physiology is reflecting to me, we are not running on all cylinders, right? You haven't been sleeping well. And so instead of me kind of perceiving, or I use my Oura ring or my Whoop strap to tell me how I'm doing, CO2 tolerance is this like in the moment reflection of how well my body is coping. Yeah. And the way I really like to explain this, we all have a window of tolerance. That window can be really narrow and I'm reactive and sensitive and anything can trigger me, or that window is really broad and wide. And I can actually, I have the resilience to take lots of stress on and I actually thrive and I move through it. And we've all experienced both of those circumstances where it's just like I'm taking everything in my stride and I'm just kind of moving forward, or the slightest little thing is throwing me off right now. And interestingly, if we measured someone's carbon dioxide tolerance in those two moments, we would see a correlation, right? When my CO2 tolerance is high, my buffer zone is really big. When my CO2 tolerance is low, or I'm very sensitive, it's not going to take much to cross this threshold and my brain to interpret this as scary or bad. And so the idea here is that the more resilient or tolerant I am to physiological changes, then the more resilient and tolerant I'm going to be to physical changes and psychological changes and emotional changes and just the rest of the stuff that life throws at us. And so why I think that's really important is it's a very simple kind of test that we can do on ourselves. And it doesn't even need to be formal. Like you found, just my ability to hold my breath got trickier. And so people, at moments of the day can kind of just pause their breathing. And if there's an immediate flooring of I've got to get out, okay, my tolerance is really low. Maybe I shouldn't go and do the high intensity workout. Maybe I should go and meditate or do some yoga or walk in nature. And if I can pause my breath and just hang out and it feels comfortable and it's like, okay, my body's telling me my buffer zone's pretty big right now. So go and do the hard thing. You've got kind of the green light from the body. And I think that as a tool for kind of self-awareness is incredibly impactful, because coming back to, what this conversation, resides around is the nervous system. I know so many people that are trying to get themselves into, a healing state, but go and do an intense workout or breathing through their mouth or, are pushing their physiology beyond its capacity right now. And that's just another form of stress that I have to then react to and try and recover from. And so having this kind of like personal gauge of, should I go hard or should I just ease off today based on what my body's telling me? I think it just really puts people into that position of, I can choose the thing that's going to benefit me most today.
Yeah, so powerful. It's so powerful. So for those listening, Campbell, should we do just a quick Bolt score so people can kind of get an idea of where they are? And then maybe we'll just give a couple tips on how they might go about improving that score. It's a really fun measurement because one, it's sort of where you are, and it tells you, how your nervous system is doing. If your Bolt score goes down, you'll notice that you can feel it. You'll start to become more aware. Like Campbell said, if he doesn't sleep well, a lot of stress, whatever's going on, you'll be able to make that connection. And there's some stuff you can do to raise that over time so that you're more resilient to stress. And it's just, again, it just brings more awareness to, no wonder I feel this way. This is because this is how I'm breathing. This is where I am with my CO2 tolerance.
So Bolt score refers to kind of body oxygen level test. I think it's an interesting name for it because we're really measuring carbon dioxide, not oxygen, but we'll leave it as its name. We'll do this in a somewhat, not informal way, but because we do have a lot of people on here, I'll talk us through how we're going to do the test, and I'm going to have a timer running on my side, and I'm just going to kind of throw out levels at 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. So what we're all going to do, so while you're listening to me speak right now, I want you just breathing normally. Okay. And so we're not changing our breath in any way before we do this practice or this test. In a moment, right, once I tell you to, I'm going to say, take your last breath. It will be a normal inhale through the nose. It will be a normal exhale out through the nose. After I've exhaled, I'm going to pinch my nose and I'm going to hold my breath, right? And when I tell everyone to hold their breath, I'm just going to start a timer on my end. This isn't a competition. It's not a measurement of how long can you maximally hold your breath, right? No one should be clenching their jaw or their fists and going blue in the face. That's not what we're measuring. We're measuring how long does it take until you feel I need to breathe.
Yeah.
I'd like to breathe. There's a desire that's building up saying, I want to let go of my nose and I want to take a breath now. That's the number we're looking for. So when you feel that, okay, you're just going to kind of note, well, what's the next number that I say? I'll just be counting and take that as my bolt score. So maybe it's 12 seconds, maybe it's 25 seconds. So when you need to breathe, you let go and just listen for the number that I'm counting out. And then we'll just talk about a couple of levels. If your number is this is what you should do, or this is what it might indicate. So everyone kind of sitting in a nice, comfortable position. We want to try and relax the shoulders and make sure the body is in a good, comfy position. Just breathing normally in and out through the nose. And wherever you are in the cycle of breath, we'll all just kind of take a final breath in now. We're going to breathe out naturally. And then we're going to pinch our nose and hold our breath. And we're just going to relax. Right? We're going to keep our body soft. So we're at 5 seconds. And we're just observing what's maybe building up. We're at 10 seconds. When you feel a distinctive urge to breathe, you'll let go and you'll breathe. 15, 20. And so we're going to just keep going. For some of you, we'll have a higher tolerance, 25 seconds. And again, we're not forcing anything, just really trying to stay relaxed, 30 seconds. And just in light of time, we'll kind of pause the test at about 35 seconds. If any of you are still holding, fantastic. It's a great indication that your physiology is flexible. And right now, maybe you're feeling pretty good. What's the number one thing I want everyone to understand before we kind of go through numbers? This number fluctuates pretty wildly. If you've just exercised, if you've just eaten food, if you didn't sleep well last night, if you're worried about what you have to do this, it's going to be impacted. So I don't want you to hear, oh, my number is low, something must be wrong. You might have just had a busy day. You might not have slept well last night. So the best thing people can do is, wake up and measure this. You just grab a timer on your phone or your stopwatch, because hopefully your phone's not in your room, and just kind of breathe in, breathe out, pause and hold my breath. When do I need to breathe? Okay, that's my number. And do that every day for a couple of days and you'll get an actual number. And then throughout the day, if you kind of measure this, you can go, yes, go and do the hard thing because my number's at its highest, or maybe I should kind of pull back a little bit because my number's lower than usual. I'm 5 seconds lower than my kind of normal. So when we're kind of, the numbers that I look for, if we're 10 seconds and below, right, I would find it extremely unlikely that you don't suffer with anxiety, maybe panic attacks. You've definitely got dysfunctional breathing mechanics. And this is not something that started yesterday, right? This is like you've been breathing a certain way for likely years, if not decades. 10 to 20 seconds. Again, I'm pretty confident that there is some room for improvement of breathing mechanics. Maybe your diaphragm's a little bit tight. Maybe your rib cage is a little bit immobile. And so it's requiring you to breathe a little bit more frequently than maybe you need to. Okay. And so again, some improvements that can be made. 20 to 30 seconds, you've probably got pretty good breathing mechanics. You're probably breathing with your diaphragm. You don't have a high respiratory rate. You're probably, fit, for lack of a better description, physiologically. 30 to 40 seconds, we're starting to approach what I would consider, gold standard. This is where I'd like most people to be, and 40 seconds and beyond, cool. You breathe really well. Your physiology is very flexible. You've got high stress resilience. You've got the adaptability to deal with, a lot of different forms of stress. And so for those of you that are down on that kind of below 10 or 10 to 20 is just kind of thinking, maybe I do need to address how I breathe, right? Maybe there are some bad habits that I've picked up over the years of sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. Of course, I'm going to breathe in properly, or pregnancy, or back pain or surgery or abdominal pain, So there's lots of different reasons. I don't want people to think my number's really low, I must be broken. I want you to think, why? Like, what could be the contributing factor? I do work a desk job. Cool. That might mean I should prioritize a little bit of body work around unraveling the position that most of us spend a lot of time in. And the part of this that I think's, a good insight to have is it's not as though we're going to go, I'm going to get to 30 seconds and I'm done.
Yeah.
The higher that number, the better,
Yeah.
right? Why wouldn't we want more stress resilience and more physiological flexibility? So when I kind of first delved into this world, my CO2 tolerance, I think, was about 18 or 19 seconds. Yeah. And when I kind of was really working at it, I was up at about 65, 70 seconds. As I mentioned, lack of sleep over the last few months with our baby, it's back down to about 25, 30 seconds at the moment. And so it's not like, it's like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm doing the right thing so I can rebuild that tolerance, because it's been a difficult couple of months and my body's telling me, it's been a difficult couple of months. And so we want to give ourselves a bit of grace there and work our way back to, a more optimal level of tolerance or physiology.
This is so important, Cambell, because I think so many people, they don't have that information and they go and work out anyways, or they do a long fast, or they do some high intensity interval training or something that takes an already overly stressed body, although they weren't aware, and pushes it over the edge. And that's when we get sick. And now we're working against our hormones, against our physiology. Now we're depleting ourselves rather than going, okay, I'm a little stressed out. My Bolt score just dropped significantly overnight. I need to prioritize rest and recovery today. Maybe a walk, breathing through my nose is a lot more appropriate than sprints on a treadmill where I'm huffing and puffing through my mouth, taking my body into a further stress state. So such an important tool to have.
And isn't it so interesting that, again, this kind of reductionist mind of, I know so many people that when they're overly stressed, whether it's at work or at home, they turn to high intensity exercise as a way to de-stress, right? And I'm not saying that that's wrong per se, but when we look at how physiology responds, is that the best thing? No, right now it's not. Is high intensity exercise bad? Of course not. If you've got the capacity and the tolerance to positively adapt to it, it's wonderful. Yeah. Great research on it, But if you've had a stressful day, your CO2 tolerance is low, and you go and smash yourself in the gym, or you go and do the really hard workout because it helps you de-stress, then you'll get some of the endorphin release and you'll feel a little bit de-stressed. Yeah. But you've actually just stressed yourself out way more. And so now I'm continuing to kind of perpetuate that imbalance or that, dysregulation that's occurring in the body.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because most of my community, females, and weight loss is a big thing, or weight loss resistance is something that a lot of my clients struggle with. And there's this whole idea that I'm really stressed out, I need to just go on a run and burn this off. And when the body is overly stressed, cortisol is high, nervous system is dysregulated, weight loss isn't going to happen. It's not the priority. Surviving is the priority. And so this really is the difference. And I talk to my female clients about this all the time. This is the difference of whether or not, you're working with your body and with your hormones, or against your body, your hormones, your physiology, which can feel really frustrating. So if you're struggling with weight loss, you're doing all the right things. Start paying attention to your stress levels and then tailoring your exercise when you fast, these other hormetic stressors with that level of stress, with that Bolt score. So Cambell, maybe two things. So I think there's probably a lot of people here who've had a lower Bolt score than they probably wanted. I know I still do. I'm still working to raise mine. What are maybe two of your favorite ways to just things we can practice each day to raise that CO2 tolerance and get a higher score?
Definitely. So let's give us one for each kind of, influence. So number one being kind of the way that I'm breathing, or my mechanics of breathing. That's absolutely going to come down to how mobile my diaphragm is. If my diaphragm's really tight, I'm going to breathe with my chest, and I'm going to offload more CO2, and my kind of sensitivity is going to stay there. So a really easy kind of exercise, I'm just going to come up so people can see, the diaphragm is kind of this dome, is let's actually get in and give it a little bit of a massage, and some of you will be going, oh, this feels really tight and really uncomfortable, but the diaphragm should be really nice and mobile. I can nearly get my whole fingers under there. My diaphragm obviously is quite mobile because I do this all the time. But just getting in and spending maybe a minute or two, giving the diaphragm just a gentle stretch and massage so that it has adequate range of motion to take a slower and deeper breath. If I can take more air in, I don't need to take as many breaths, right? If I'm breathing out 15 times a minute versus 8 times a minute, there's a different level of carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So first thing we want to kind of address is the biomechanics, and do I have adequate range of motion and function, of my diaphragm? And then the second thing we can kind of use as an exercise to increase my tolerance or increase my BOLT score is actually exposing ourselves to a little bit more carbon dioxide than usual. And the thing I love about this, right, this doesn't need to be a formal exercise. This needs to be understanding. So if you're going on that run, make sure your mouth's closed.
Yeah.
More CO2. You're going to it feels like I need to breathe. And that's how I'm in exactly where I need to be right now, and modulating your intensity rather than opening your mouth. So slow down a little bit so you can keep running or keep walking or keep doing the yoga or whatever it might be, and breathe through your nose and feel that slight feeling of, I want to breathe more. Yeah. We're actually seeking that out with this exercise. That can be done by just gently holding our breath. So the same way that we tested it today, we breathed in, out, we pause. So doing that, but a little bit more frequently, but making sure that I'm really calm when I do it. So the CO2 builds up and my brain's going, oh, what's going on? Oh, I'm relaxed. I'm sitting in a chair. I'm very, very calm. And so it starts to think, well, maybe this number, maybe I don't need to react at this amount of carbon dioxide. So it lifts the ceiling a little bit. Things like slow breathing or even box breathing, if done the right way, will cause a bit more carbon dioxide to accumulate. So in all of these examples, whether it's exercise, formal breath work, gentle breath holds intermittently throughout the day, we're just wanting to let a little bit more CO2 build up, because I'm usually breathing it out all the time, and make sure that I don't react to it. So we don't want people holding their breath and, right? That was pretty stressful. And so it's just feeling like my body's noticing more carbon dioxide, make sure I stay calm, go back to normal breathing, or slow my run down or finish the breathwork practice. But the more I expose myself to a bit more CO2, my physiology is going to adapt to that.
Yeah. So important. And that's probably one of my favorite benefits of increasing CO2 tolerance is the more tolerant we are to CO2, the more tolerant we are. And there's such a direct correlation between people that struggle with stress and anxiety and how long, their BOLT score, how long they can hold their breath. So by increasing our tolerance to CO2, doing those mini breath holds, making sure that we're breathing, through the diaphragm, loosening up the diaphragm, all of those things are going to help you be more tolerant to stress, which I think everyone is looking for tools to help with that.